red, blue, purple light. Friends, red, blue, purple light. Friends, facts, red, blue, purple light. Friends, red and blue, purple light. Friends, facts. You can get to know the ledger, sacrilegious Sunday to melanin Monday. You can get to know the ledger, my love. Just open your third eye on Thursday. Lord, the food, the art, the clothes, the Vatican's getting exposed fast. We put the show on the road. You better stay on your toes. I was till the land focused on the ego. Then I open my heart, let go of the ego. Grand after grand, we stacking up these C notes. Facts, facts, yeah. We gon' put this shit on our backs. Facts, facts. We in your city, pull up where we at. Facts, facts. Peace, love and light. Peace, love to the family. Peace, love and light to the family. Peace, love and light to the family.
These days and time, black man, is going to be the time that you have been waiting for. You came here for a reason. Whatever pressure, whatever adversity, whatever the fuck you feel, I don't know what you feel, but whatever you may be feeling is going to push you and it's going to provoke you and it's either going to make you or break you, similar to how pressure busts pipes or the shit makes diamonds.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Peace to you and yours. Peace to you and yours. Peace to you and yours. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Know the Ledger 444. You are now rocking with the best. Yes, this is your host for the evening, Brother Red Pillar, soon to be joined by my esteemed guest for the evening. We are going to skip the roll call, ladies and gentlemen, and we are going to get right into the conversation and bring my guests on stage. We don't want to hold y'all up. We don't want to waste any time. We don't want to burn the midnight oil. We got work to do. So without any I don't know, I'm forgetting the word, but we got our good brother, none other than the Blue Pillar, coming to the stage. All right. So ladies and gentlemen, clap it up. Blue Pillar in the building. Peace to the God.
Without any further ado.
Without any further ado. There you go.
I
literally got stuck on without any further ado. So without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you our guest for this evening on this powerful panel that we're having. This is KTL alumni in the building. Two of the sharpest minds in our community. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, gods and goddesses, Moors and Moabites, I present to you our good brother, SHARIF, ANAEL, BEY, and our good brother, Dr. Wesley Muhammad in the building.
Peace to all the gods.
Peace to the gods.
Peace. All
right?
Brothers, peace, God.
Yes, indeed, man. First and foremost, I want to say welcome to the platform. How you good brothers doing? Y'all looking great, man. How y'all doing tonight?
Excellent.
Yes, we in good company.
No doubt. I'm about to send Scotty Woods a free bottle or something because he said the Fantastic Four, and I like that.
That's right.
Scotty, I'm gonna send you some oud from Dubai, my brother. You're gonna get blessed with that. I like that. The Fantastic Four, man.
I'm a Marvel head myself.
Yeah,
Oh yeah,
Before Disney took it over.
exactly.
of
That's
course. We
Disney
talking,
ruined
we talking Jim Lee.
the
You
old
know
mall.
what I'm saying? Jim Lee
Stanley,
covers and whatnot. Huh?
Stanley.
Stanley.
No, Jim Lee was the guy who drew the X-Men covers in the 90s.
Oh no, this is true. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
correct.
he's the
I stand
powerful
correct.
pen.
Right.
So
You're the Hulk.
definitely the Stan Lee era.
Yeah.
I'm a Marvel. Blue is a DC.
Blue, you DC?
You're a DC head.
Come on, we always doing that. I'm X-Men, X Factor for life, man. I don't, he just
All right,
wanna-
bro, we were Dark Horse.
With, bro.
We were Dark Horse and Image though. Don't forget that. We were Dark Horse and we were Image Comics. That's Lobos, that's X-Force, that's Spawn.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
when it started going
Todd
into
McFarlane.
graphic
Yeah.
novels and whatnot.
Ooh, okay.
But I'm a Marvel baby all the way.
But I do mess with Dark Knight from DC.
Yes.
Yes.
Dark Knight,
Yes.
I can get with Dark Knight.
Absolutely.
Yes. I deal with the
Absolutely.
Watchmen with Dr.
I
Manhattan
do
in them.
too. Watchmen too.
Yeah, those are my
Watchmen.
guys and whatnot.
Yeah. I was, I the one thing I've been doing longer than martial arts is drawing. So, that's how, I'm an illustrator. And so I'm a fan of certain artists and certain inkers. So with DC and the Electra series, Bill Sienkiewicz's work. Yeah, Bill Sienkiewicz is crazy. I love his stuff.
And I'm a big
Write
fan
that
of
down.
Frank Miller, Batman era in DC,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And something that I always was wondering, and I always wanted to bring this up because it really piqued my interest as an artist myself. Me and Blue, we are both illustrators as well. We used to read the Source magazine, and we were blown away with how many MCs/rap artists were actually artists.
Yes.
Facts.
It blew my mind. I'm talking about Eminem.
Yay.
Who?
Kanye.
Kanye, right? Eminem. The list goes on.
Dre 3000.
Art.
Yeah.
Wow.
Beanie
A lot of them
Siegel,
were Geminis too. Yeah.
Huh?
A lot of Geminis. A lot of Gemini artists
Right.
are also visual artists.
Visual artists, right?
And yeah.
Nice.
Chuck D, they said,
Mhm.
inspect the deck. You feel me?
Okay.
Like,
Okay. I didn't know that.
there's a power in being able to utilize your imagination. Because I when I do my nostalgia on the show and I bring people back into the golden era, I say, look, a lot of those lyrics were littered with Saturday morning cartoon nuances. Like the Wu-Tang was very popular for interjecting our quote unquote zeitgeist, our cartoon zeitgeist from back in those days into their lyrics, swinging through the hood like the neighborhood Spider-Man. So
TikTok,
the whole Wu-Tang is Saturday morning. They went from the cartoons to the kung fu.
Saturday morning to Saturday night.
To Saturday, right. From Saturday morning all the way into Saturday night. They had the Saturday Night Live, the fever.
The Kung Fu piece came on late at night. I remember.
Yeah.
My mother let me watch it. It was late. It was after my bedtime.
You're a Michigan baby, though, right?
Oh, I'm Michigan. Go Blue.
Yes, sir. See, in New York, it was Channel 5, right?
Channel 5. Sometimes like 3 o'clock, right?
Yep, exactly.
3 o'clock.
They roll them joints out. And at nighttime, we used to get Charles Bronson. So you get the Death Wish and all of them guys, they debut Saturday night. You know what I'm saying? Remember, Fox used to have the apple on it.
The spaghetti westerns.
Yep.
Right?
The westerns, the Italian joints.
Yeah, we had all of the spaghetti westerns. That was Saturday in the afternoon.
Yep.
Then at night, we would have Benny Hill.
We're making some great points, and I want to segue from here because in the midst of all of this, we were being inundated, right? Our minds, for the most part, we were being introduced to ideas of for the most, you know, we were being inundated by white male Western psychology, and we were given these particular concepts, you know, specifically with the cowboy aspect of things. And then we had to filter because we had to go out into the real world with this ideology. And we knew that it was impactful and effective because the children would come outside immediately and enact the things that they saw, right? Whether that was through Kung Fu or playing cowboys and Indians. You know what I'm saying? And cowboy and Indians turned into cops and robbers and things of that nature. So how did you filter the indoctrination of being inundated by white male psychology, you know, Western ideals being constantly, you know, beamed through us? We had a way to balance it with Eastern philosophy because of the Kung Fu. And we learned about morals and principles. We kind of knew who the bad guys was, even though some of us wanted to be the graybeards. So for you personally, you know what I'm saying? How did you filter it?
Wow. I can't say I did until later.
Okay.
I mean, if I'm being totally honest, I can't say I did. It's like, you know, we got the nourishment with the poison. You know what I'm saying? But you could tell what spirit was in us as to what we really consciously gravitated to. See, we gravitated to the Bruce Lee movies. Right. We gravitated to 40 Deuce on Saturdays, you know what I'm saying? And the Kung Fu movies, because there was something in it that spoke to us, you know, that was like against the grain. You know what I mean?
Right. They want a hero's journey.
Yes. Yeah. And not just that, but it was the rise up against depression type thing.
Right.
And especially with the training montages. Okay, you had the guy, he ain't know nothing, and then he was wrongly done or whatever, and then he finds a teacher, and then it's showing graded progress and sustained effort over time.
Hero's journey, right?
Come on.
And Asaurian myth, or the Asaurian mythos, because what do we remember from the Kung Fu movies? I'm avenging my father's death, or I'm avenging my master's death.
I'm wrong. I'm righting wrong, and I don't care if it takes me 10 years to do it.
Right. And then they will always take an initial loss in their efforts. They would get beat up, boop boop. Then they would have to go back. And do that training thing that you say with the water jugs, and the you know, and hitting the bamboo and everything. Keep hitting it, no, keep hitting it, no.
It you know what it taught us? It taught us, even on the subconscious level, that all success is on the other side of opposition, and so hopefully we learn, instead of to run away from our Frankenstein monster, we learn to lean into it.
Right. On the other side of pain is victory.
There you go.
You feel me?
Yes.
And you could take loss and turn it into your quote unquote marching. You know what I mean? Like, you could take a loss and you could turn that into something that is necessarily, you could take a loss of a loved one and you could turn that into something legendary. Henceforth, why we began to gravitate towards these street organizations, and what would get us charged up? Revenging those who were wronged in our organization, who we had to take, who we basically had to redeem them by being honorable in either their memory or in their names. You know, and like Blue said, that all was given to us. Those seeds were being planted through the spaghetti westerns, the Kung Fu's, the Autobots versus the Decepts, He-Man versus Skeletor, you name it. All of this programming,
Cobra, right? G.I. Joe and Cobra.
Yeah, G.I. Joe and Cobra. So it's like you were saying, Sharif, if you really pay attention back in those days, you would begin to see how people would gravitate towards characters and what character they would identify with, right? Because I knew people that was unapologetically like, nah, I'm Destro.
Right.
I'm Zanbar. I'm Xantar.
Yo, ain't that crazy?
Yeah, they would collect all of the bad guys.
Watch this. It's literally no different than the ancient Kemetic tradition of taking on or assuming a god form. It's theurgy.
Right. It's theurgy. Right. Fast forward, even today, it plays out in hip hop where people are attracted to the anti-hero. They're attracted to the villainous characters in the quote unquote entertainment, right? They're like, I don't want to hear that woke stuff, Sharif. I don't want to deal with the light. I want to deal with the darkness. I want that Diddy shit.
Yeah. Sadly.
I'm sorry,
yeah. Sadly, yeah. Sadly.
The darker side of things.
There's a power there.
Huh?
There's a power there.
Yeah.
It's undeniable. But you know, as we used to say back in the day, and it still rings true today, you know, power without refinement corrupts.
Yes.
Perfect way to segue into the conversation that we're going to be having tonight. We're going to take a trip around the world, ladies and gentlemen, because I'm here with two global ambassadors. You feel me? And these brothers have a global audience, and they are sharp. They are sharp in their quote unquote geopolitical, esoteric, metaphysical, historic accounts about both what's going on and what has gone on. So I want to first get in the plane and let's go across to the continent and then come back. One of the places where I want our plane to land is in the quote unquote Sahel region of Africa, ladies and gentlemen. And if you are not familiar with the Sahel region, that is a part of Africa that is mostly Islamic with a French influence.
That's right.
And currently that region has been going through a series of coup d'etats, bloodless revolutions, right? Meaning that these nations are taking back their independence without civil war or without firing a shot, right? And one of the most polarizing figures to rise out of the ashes of this bloodless revolution that's taking place on the continent is a good brother who we are becoming more familiar with by the day, who goes by the name of Ibrahim Traore. Before we get into anything and I begin to ask any questions, I want everyone's take on this figure. And not only him, of course, there's about 3 other quote unquote figures that are out there that need to be acknowledged, right? Because I'm peeping how the propaganda is beginning to only zero in on this man when he is part of an allegiance and an alliance, right? So I just want to know I'm going to start with you, Blue, go to Dr. Wesley, and then my good brother Sharif.
Yes.
What is your initial take as to what it is that you're seeing taking place on the continent right now in the Sahel region?
This is somewhat deep. I'm gonna be, do the best I can to summarize this narrative. I remember I was doing some reports and research, and I came across something about Mali. I was researching the Dogon region, but in the present day, they had a massacre in the mountains in Mali and what have you. And I read the narrative, and they said that some farmers were beefing and what have you, and then they said that there was a lot of influence from ISIS, right? From ISIL or whatever they were calling them at the time. Mm-hmm. And then from that, then they said no, that was ISIL masquerading for the quote unquote French. And then they were speaking about Timbuktu and ISIL still coming in and destroying relics and what have you, and then desecrating these people, these older farmers, because they killed off elders who were walking libraries as well. So I'm like, they're decimating the living libraries. They're still destroying the physical ones. They're knocking down monuments. They're just desecrating history altogether. And it was very heavy on my heart. And I did a little bit further research into it. And it spoke about the instability in the region at that time. They were pressing and pushing against the French to get up out of there. So I prayed on that. Like, man, them people got to go. So a few years later, when I kind of saw that this was taking place, I was like, wow, you know, the brother must be a herald of change. And it was during a very tumultuous period. There was a lot of upheaval globally. And I just saw that what was going on in the continent had to be indicative of a particular spirit that might and should have been stirring through us. I think that we got extinguished because, you know, we encase and involve ourselves with politics. So that same energy that was being built up in 2020 around this time, specifically around George Floyd. And
Yes.
I'm just speaking about an upswelling of energy. I'm not speaking about the politics of it. I'm not signaling out how it was caused or who galvanized it or what have you. I just remember that it was a force. You know what I'm
Yes.
saying? And it was obviously it was a force to be reckoned with because there was a very succinct political response to it. They politicized and they attacked the ideal and the idea, and they called it woke, and they initiated a cultural war against it, right? So this is a war with it's a stateless enemy, right? And it's an idea rather than a select group or a person, but they
Right.
called it a war, a cultural war. And
Mhm.
I'm like, wow, look at what has these people terrified and petrified. I had also read a report at the same time that said, and it was with Eric Prince. And Eric Prince had went to Congo because he was attempting to get Blackwater into the major market. Look, the Dikembe Mutombo, it was a New York Times magazine article, and they was in the only 5-star hotel in the Congo region. And in the lobby, it was the Dikembe Mutombo meeting with Chinese folk. It was Eric Prince trying to jockey and get his position in to figure out how can the US get into what they considered to be already a fleeting situation. They was already at the back of the line. So this was a race for rare earth minerals that China was leading, that Russia was involved with, and the US, they was too busy doing something else. So they came late to the party
Right.
and they wanted to do anything that they could to get involved. Not too long after that, the Dikembe mysteriously, you know what I'm saying, transitions. And then Eric Prince is sitting up there talking about Africa needs to be colonized again. So,
Right.
and then I seen them son CQ, right? I seen what Pete Heger did the minute they came to the Pentagon. They son he CQ, threw him under the deodorant, and then they had him stripped out, right? Dancing like how Diddy might have one of his things dancing, and they put him as the face of AFRICOM to say, yo, this is the ops. I was like, oh, look how this thing is playing out. So I look at him as a herald of change, and he represents the symbolism of what Africa overall represents in terms of a youthful uprising that not too many people have an answer for, because that's the only continent with a positive birth rate, and 60% of their population is, you know, around the age of 18 and under.
Right.
Whereas the contrast is that what they call the global north is being led by somebody who's almost 80 and represents a bygone era of white fragility. So that's my observation.
Dope.
No doubt.
No, powerful. I agree with you, Blue. Our brother Captain Ibrahim Traore, he's a herald of change and the future. You know, Africa has suffered for a long time.
Very long.
I never forget when I was a freshman at Morehouse in the 90s. This was the height. We didn't use woke. This was the height of Afrocentricity. Right?
Yeah. Afrocentric.
The great late Dr. Ben was at the height of his popularity. Dr. Clark, Afrocentricity
Yes.
was
Yes.
at its apex during the 90s.
Right. Through academia, correct?
Would you say?
Through academia, correct?
Yeah. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Now, I never forget. It was either Newsweek or Time. I believe it was Time magazine. their subtle response and mockery of that movement was in a cover story titled "The Agony of Africa."
Wow.
And the story chronicled and illustrated all of the suffering, of the myriad of sufferings, if you will, that Africa was experiencing. And in every sidebar, every side box, it was outlined in green, black, and red. And I never forgot the Agony of Africa story and the impotency, if you will. See, one of the subtle messages was you all talking all of this Africa. Here's your Africa, as Killmonger said of Black Panther. Is this your king?
Right.
That's what the West, who's responsible for the agony of Africa.
Yes.
That's what they were saying. That was their pushback. Now,
Right.
Africa was always due for liberation, for liberators. And I am very hopeful. I'm very inspired by Brother Captain Ibrahim Traore. I pray that Allah protects him.
Yes.
When I heard that the enemy offered $5 million to one of his lieutenants to assassinate him.
Right.
And by Allah's grace, the brother was loyal to the cause. I thought about the late Fidel Castro and how he liberated his land, and the enemy, the CIA, tried over 600 times to assassinate him in the whole smorgasbord of ways.
Right.
Yeah, but Allah had a hedge around Fidel Castro for decades.
Yes.
The West was never able to claim to put that feather in their hat. My prayer is that Captain Ibrahim Traore and all of those who are aligned with him and are making such a profound and strong move on the world scene for Africa, I pray that Allah has a hedge around him, because he's strong. He's a Muslim.
Yes.
Look, he's handsome.
Come on now.
So he has everything. What he does for Black masculinity. Let's just start there.
Right.
What he does for Black masculinity on the world scene is a godsend.
Come on now.
And so I pray that he is successful. I pray that he is protected, that this Islamic revolution that we're witnessing comes to a successful conclusion.
Beautifully said.
Wow. Listen, the way he ended it was perfect. The way Minister just ended it. An Islamic revolution. See, something else I'm really a fan of my brother Wesley. I'm telling you.
We're mutual. I'm a fan of everybody on this platform.
So in a previous presentation he's done a while back, he was talking about Islam and our people. And he said the European, it wasn't so much as a fear of Islam. It was a fear of Islam in the hands of our people.
Right.
Stoddard articulated that point specifically in his book, The Rise, The Fall of White Supremacy.
Come on now.
And when he said that Islam, the greatest threat to white supremacy and what white men, he said, universally fear.
Come on.
It's Islam in Africa, Islam in the hands or in the soul of the African.
Right.
Inspires militancy
There you
in
go.
the
Right.
African. And the marriage of Islam and black people, Islam and the African, that is the threat to white supremacy. Remember, as everyone, the Moors on this platform know, Europe's devil, Europe's boogeyman
They boogeyman.
was the black Muslim.
Period.
The
Specifically.
black Muslim
Period.
was the devil of Christianity.
That's it.
Right. Specifically,
That's
the
it.
African Muslim from the Sahel,
Absolutely.
the Almoravid dynasty, and the Almohad dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, the Umayyad dynasty going all the way back. We're going to talk about the Umayyad when we talk about Saudi, right? And the original Arabian.
Mm-hmm.
But when you talk about the Almoravids and the Almohad dynasty and the Nasir dynasty, the dynasties that came out of the Sahel region and replaced dynasties that were in the Iberian Peninsula.
Which the Umayyad was. The Umayyad dynasty was the dynasty of Al-Andalus.
Al-Andalus, right.
Right. So the Umayyads were in Muslim Spain.
That's a fact.
Right.
They were replaced by the Almoravids.
Abbasids.
Right.
Well,
So
Almoravids and then the right. That's
right. So different dynasties replace other dynasties. The African Muslims, when they came in, and they were the Arab Muslims running things, and they were losing the war, they were losing the Reconquista, they were losing to the Crusaders and whatnot. So these warriors out of Africa who took the deen a little more serious than the Muslims who were kind of like they were in Europe, you know what I mean, rubbing elbows and mingling with the European over there.
I think we should be a bit more graphic.
Yes.
And specific.
Right.
This is very important history.
Yeah.
I don't want, because the word African and the word Arab was thrown out there, and the average listener would think we're talking about a racial conflict, and we're not. Let's be real clear. The original conquerors of the Muslim conquerors of the Iberian Peninsula, they were black Arabs.
Fact.
The majority of the Saracens, right? European medieval history talks about the Saracens, these black Saracens, that's their name for the black Muslims.
Right, Saracens.
They were largely of the Banu Azd, the black Arabian, black Arab group. There were Africans among them.
Yes.
So what we're talking about, the Moors, the original conquerors, Muslim conquerors of the Iberian Peninsula, were black Arabs,
yes, sir,
and black Africans.
That's it.
Yeah.
Now, the Umayyad dynasty, when the Abbasids conquered the Umayyads in the central Islamic lands, an Umayyad prince made his way to the Iberian Peninsula. Is that Umar? The Umayyad dynasty in Muslim Spain. That's how you get the Umayyads in the West.
That's right.
During the Abbasid period, there was a vestige of Umayyad reign in Al-Andalus. But I see you, Blue, and I'm
no problem. Yes, I got you.
But that's the point I want us to get. Is we're talking about black Arabs and black Africans, both Muslims who conquered Muslim Spain. Now, the point that you're making, Red, is absolutely right. The downfall of Islam in the West is these black Arabs. Absolutely, they didn't just rub elbows with the Europeans. They bidded. Let's just keep it all the way. They bidded these Europeans.
That's a fact.
And they imploded
That's
from
what happened.
within.
Yes.
That's how the Black Muslim dynasty ended by implosion. It imploded when they integrated. Because
Right.
the original
Integration.
Muslims separated, segregated themselves from non-Arab converts.
Right.
They
That's right.
did not mix like that. When they started mixing and bidding the non-Black Arabs, that's when the culture imploded. I'm sorry, go ahead, Blue.
No, that's a fact. Go ahead, Blue.
I'm going to send it right back towards you, my good brother Wesley. I just figured that this would be a wonderful time to explain to them a phrase that I heard you coin that I've never forgotten ever since I heard it, and that's Afrabia.
Yes, sir.
And
Yes, sir.
I want you to take this opportunity to kind of give us a geography lesson. You know what I'm saying? What exactly is the Middle East? Is it something that exists, or is this a political term? And what do you coin Afrabia?
Yeah, yes, sir. So I did not coin the term Afrabia, but I gave it a particular significance.
Yes.
Let's start with the geographical point. Remember, Red and Blue, when I was debating the issue of Islam, is Islam an Arab or an African religion?
Yes.
Kept insisting. Those who I was arguing with, the reason they lost, they had the wrong definition of Africa. They had the white man, they were holding up the white man's Africa. Right. There is a such thing as the white man's Africa, meaning the Africa that the white cartographers, map makers, designated on the maps as Africa. It was European map makers who said Africa stops west of the Red Sea.
That's right.
Right.
Africa stops west of the Red Sea and Asia begins east of the Red Sea. That was a decision made by European map makers. God said that Africa includes that part of that we call the Middle East. What I mean by God determined the geomorphic, the ethnic, the climatological, all of the sciences prove that that area east of the Red Sea called Arabia, called the Middle East, it is part of the African land mass. The animal species, the fauna is African.
Right.
The people are African. That is Northeast Africa in its most physical, geomorphic, biological way.
Correct.
So stopping Africa west of the Red Sea is to exalt the white man's Africa.
That's fact.
So when Islam rose up in that part of Africa by an African people, this is why we can say it's an African religion. So Afrabia, Africa and Arabia, the union of Africa and Arabia highlights that point, that area is literally Northeast Africa, and I call it Afrabia.
That definition and explanation in one word, Afrabia, disarms European psychology.
Right.
We say, what does Ethiopia mean? Now, mind you, the Prophet Drew Ali said this before there was a country, before it was renamed Ethiopia from Abyssinia. He said, what does Ethiopia mean? We say Ethiopia means something divided. And that's, the brother spoke exactly to that point. It means something divided. See? So no, that statement, Afrabia, it it decolonizes political geography.
And to give credit where credit is due, because I hate people who plagiarize.
Right.
It was Ali Majrui who coined the term Afrabia. I learned the term. He didn't use it in the way I'm using it, but he coined the term. So I always give credit where credit
is due.
I try not to rob God, but I'm not trying to rob man either.
Right.
Well, being that we talking about that, right? Somebody brought up the Maghreb and the Levant. Very interestingly enough, right? I want to unpack Saudi Arabia. I've spoken on this show about my disdain for the Saudis based off of my research on, their history and whatnot. I think a lot of people in the audience often confuse Ottomans, Mamelukes, Berbers, and other people of that region for being the indigenous people of said region, right? And they're not fully familiar with the Afrabia story or melanated people in Saudi, right? However, there are videos that are circulating on the internet that show both, is it real, right? Jerusalem in the 20s. They show Yemen in the 20s. And they also show other areas with heavily melanated people. Heavily, I'm talking about Sudan type of black, right? Can we unpack who exactly the Saudi Arabian royal family are and what they mean to that region, and also the rise of the Ottomans, the rise of the Mamelukes, and all of these people who are in these regions now, who are basically usurping the throne and cosplaying as Africans?
Yes, sir. You are speaking to a process that I have called, and I did coin this term, the Aryanization of Islam.
There you go.
When you speak of the Ottomans, when you speak of the Turks, they are parties to this process of the Aryanization of Islam. Aryanization, Aryanization, meaning Aryan, as in Aryan nation, but Aryanization,
right,
comes from Iran. The name of the state, Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran.
Yes.
It was originally called Persia. That land was called Persia.
Yes.
One of the Shahs renamed it Iran from Aryan because the Persians have always been a very proud white people. Persians are not Arabs.
Right.
Right.
The big mistake that people not in the know talking about Islam make. Persians are not Arabs. In fact, they hate Arabs. Persians are not Semites.
Right.
Persian language is not a Semitic language. It's an Indo-European language.
Indo-European.
Right.
It's
These are
used
Indo-European.
Arabic script to write.
Right.
The Persians were the quintessential whites.
Right.
They were proud Aryans. It's the Persians who are responsible for sacking the Black Umayyad dynasty.
That's right.
9th century. The Abbasids, even though the name of that dynasty from the Banu Abbas or Abbas, that was a black Arab tribe, but that was just the figurehead of that revolution. The main thrust of that revolution that sacked the Umayyads, the Black Umayyads, were the white Persians.
Right.
And after the white Persians overthrew the black Arabs through the Abbasid revolution, you got the Persians. Then the Turks and the Ottomans, all of these white groups now are the face of Islam.
That's right.
In face of the Muslim world in general.
Right.
And then Christians, former Christians, Byzantines, these people converted not just to Islam, but converted to Arabism.
Arabism.
And when non-Arabs converted to Islam, they also converted to Arabism. And so a new Arab emerged. The Saudi royal family today represents the new Arab. In fact, they trace their lineage to what was a decidedly black tribe.
Mm-hmm.
But we don't see that today.
That's right.
So Saudi Arabia is the poster for this process of the Aryanization of Islam. So don't be confused by the white Arabs. And of course, that's the mistake that Dr. Chancellor Williams made.
Correct.
Which caused me to have to scholar challenge his classic and biblical, the destruction of black civilization.
Right.
He blamed it on Arabs, and he
said Islam.
Defined Arabs as Caucasian people, white Caucasian. Right. We look over in Saudi Arabia and see white Arabs, and you know that's Arabs. Well, no, that's non-Arabs who became Arabized during the process of the Aryanization of Islam.
Brother said $5 Arabs.
Yeah. Look, we it's crazy that we all can, you know, in the conscious community can unilaterally agree that Khazar descendants usurped Hebrew culture, right?
Right.
But be surprised when we think it didn't happen to the Arab culture too.
Right. And of course, that's ideological, right?
Yes.
It's ideological because we can, for example, claim Sumeria as a black civilization, and it was.
Yes.
We can claim Sumerian as a so-called Negro African language,
right?
And it was.
Right.
But then turn around and say Arabic and Semitic are European cultures foreign to Africanism.
No.
But there is absolutely more evidence of the African origins of Semitism, the Semites and Arabs.
That's fact.
And of Sumer. Yeah. Even though it's there and it's convincing, but Sumerian evidence is minimal compared to Arab and Semitic evidence of blackness.
Because it's a little more contemporary.
But of course, the Sumerians don't have a nation of Islam that has been made the great villain. Right? The enemy made the nation of Islam the great villain in the Afrocentric community. And so there was what I call the Afrocentric crusades against Islam that I was pushing back at. Same thing with Hebrew. It costs nothing to admit the Hebrews were black because there was no pressure, right, on convert. Now with the rise of the various Hebrew groups, is a different dynamic.
Yes,
right.
But this is a new phenomenon.
Right,
it is. It's rising, a blossoming,
right,
of Hebrew culture like that.
That's fact.
So there was no pressure put on us if we admit that the Hebrews were originally black, but to admit that the Arabs were black, and you mean the Nation of Islam dudes aren't Arabized? You mean there's something to what them Nation of Islam dudes
exactly
claiming? There's pressure there.
And I would like to add to that point, to what Brother Wesley just said. We represent, Nation of Islam, Moorish Science System of America. Well, first, let me go back. respectfully to our Hebrew Israelite brothers and sisters, it was Islam. If there was ever a unified Africa or close to unified Africa, it was Islam that did it.
Right.
There you go. And the Nation of Islam, the Moorish Science of America, represents a decolonized or uncolonized narrative on Islam.
Absolutely.
Simple.
Absolutely. Because that so-called Orthodox Islam, I like your language, colonized Islam.
Mm-hmm.
Be clear. The Nation of Islam represents true Islam.
Straight like that.
So-called Orthodox Islam is the colonized Islam. I like your term, Brother Sharif. I will use it and give you due credit. I don't jack, I don't patronize.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But that's very important, even because, like with you mentioned with Chancellor Williams' work, which has been voraciously accepted by the majority of Afrocentrists, it did the work of the European, right? To demonize the very unification factor that in history caused Europeans to run scared.
What we don't like to, we never acknowledge,
right,
is that our brother Dr. Chancellor Williams was a devout Christian.
Yes, he was.
We don't like to acknowledge that. And so his work, and that's not a mark against him.
No.
But we got to, if you are going to consider, when you hear me talk about Islam and history, if you are going to consider, well, he a Muslim, consider the source, well, okay, I give you that. That's why I insist on my books citing footnotes, and they ain't Muslim. But if you are going to figure into my credibility or lack thereof, me being a Muslim, talking about Islam or other than Islam,
come on now,
you should be willing to figure, for example, Dr. Chancellor Williams being the devout Christian as he's writing on Islam.
That's a fact. That's a fact.
Perspective is very important.
Very important.
And if we're gonna use it, it can't be. You got to play with the same set of books on both sides.
Yeah, it's fairness. That's why I insist on it. In this is balance the scales.
Yes,
right. The arbitrary double standard, I will always push back on that. The arbitrary double standard that usually is applied to the Nation of Islam, and so I go hard in exposing the hypocrisy and the double standard.
Come on now.
There's a question in the chat. We're going to get to questions before the show is over. I didn't want to grab anything, but this kind of was in alignment with the question that I was going to ask about the Saudis and the Wahhab dynasty, just to add a little bit of context to a lot of people who may be unfamiliar, especially since the USA is now in bed with the Saudis. They've made them official partners. At least in the theater, the main stage, they got on stage with them while they were shunning Is It Real? And they signed a $600 quote unquote $1 billion deal. And then when we look at the fingerprints of the Saudis, they've taken over boxing. The only person, to my knowledge, that's fighting them is Tank Davis. Like, he's the only one that won't go over to the Saudis. And coincidentally enough, he practices Islam, but he's waving a red flag, and he's like, I ain't falling for it. Y'all see what y'all don't realize what they're doing. They took over PGA golf. They took over the golf game. They took over F1 racing. They took over boxing, and I believe that they go ahead.
Yeah, I think they're coming for horse racing.
I believe they're coming for horse racing as well. Yes. So they're washing a lot of that petrodollar and doing a lot of, the majority of those buildings in New York, those luxury high rises that are vacant and whatnot. That's all part of this laundry scheme with all of these quote unquote UAE and petrodollar nations where they wash money. However, because they are a central player, right? in American politics, right? For all of my black MAGAs and everybody that's quote unquote, when they say America, they say we, right? And they will boot up and throw the fatigues on for. So it's important to know who your bedfellow is.
Facts.
I want to get a little bit of a real quick briefer for everybody who may be unfamiliar with some of the Saudi history and who this family is and who they're not.
Well, real quick, and it's, again, Brother Wesley is more versed on this, so I like Brother Wesley to check me on this, right? But I'd throw this out first to start. Wahhabism and the merger via marriage between the Wahhabi family and the Saudi family was a big part of what we would call the Islamic Nicene Council or Islamic reformism, which gave rise to what we call today colonized Islam. And then take it a step further, right? You all saw the movie, or you heard of the movie Lawrence of Arabia. Well, the movie told the truth. What are you talking? So in other words, the Saudi family came into power in the in that area, and then later renamed Saudi Arabia by way of British intelligence. It's a British op. And then later that British op was acquired by the United States through Standard Oil Company when they struck oil.
So they've always been in
always.
Right. And they were the ones who placed them in this pseudo type of power based off of the discovery of that oil, which tilted a lot of the scales. And then, of course, with the Ottoman Empire being displaced in the war.
The Ottomans were displaced. Like, okay, there was at a particular point in time in the hijab, it was what it was called at that time. The not hijab, the Hijaz. Right. There was King Hussein.
Yes.
And then Abdulaziz ibn Saud. Right. The Brits were trying to gain control of both of them, play both sides against each other. At one point, King Hussein said, "Nah, I'm not playing." So they sided with Ibn Saud, ousted King Hussein in the year 1926. You see what I'm saying?
Yep.
So bottom line is, you have the Wahhabi family, which brought Islamic reformism, which stopped what we call ijtihad, which is adaptation of Islamic law to fit the times. It makes it alive and organic.
Right. They froze it.
They froze it. You see? They froze it, and then coupled with Saudi petrodollars, and now look what you got. You got the end of what we would call at least over there, the end of classical Islam, nearly 1,400 years of classical Islam.
Right.
See?
Yeah, I totally agree. I would direct the viewers to a small report that I authored entitled "How the CIA Evolved Modern Islam."
Excellent.
How the CIA evolved
modern Islam.
Is there a link for that?
I'm sorry?
Is there a link for that?
It's on my academia.edu page. You can just go to my academia.edu, Wesley Muhammad, and pull it down.
Okay.
And it demonstrates that the modern Muslim world, both moderate, so-called moderate, and so-called extremists, both are the handmaidens of NATO.
Yes.
And they achieved their current profile through NATO operations. Now, in terms of Saudi Arabia, the guy Sharif is correct. That's not an appropriate language to say the state of Saudi Arabia is a British op. When memorandum from British soldier Captain Bray on the Mohammedan question, 1917, he said this: "At the present moment, agitation is intense in all Mohammedan countries. The reports of agents and others confirm the extreme vitality of the pan-Islamism movement. We should therefore create a state more convenient for ourselves. This is a British captain. We should create a state more convenient for ourselves, to whom the attention of Islam should be turned. We create the state that's convenient to us, and then we turn the Muslims' attention to that state. He ends with, we have an opportunity in Arabia. That's how the Saudi state emerged. It was a op for the West. Now, Wahhabi Islam, a very important point, because the subtitle of this report, the title is How the CIA Evolved Modern Islam, and the subtitle is, and why the Nation of Islam doesn't sweat the orthodox critique of us. They condemn us as non-Muslim. We are not true Islam, but they are. The Wahhabis in the offshoot, the Salafis, condemn us energetically, and why we don't sweat them. Did you know Wahhabi Islam is the main branch of Islam in the United States? It's the most heavily funded Islam in the United States. Do you know that the Wahhabis had no interest themselves of propagating in the United States? You know why? How Wahhabi Islam became dominant in the U.S. and so well financed in the U.S. masjids, Saudi-funded masjids throughout the country? It was because the U.S. State Department prided the royal family to plant its footprint in America. The U.S. State Department is the stimulus for the spread of Wahhabi Islam in America. Why? Because Wahhabi Islam had already become the handmaiden of NATO. You do know, I'm sure everyone here knows, but so I'm saying it to the audience. The Bin Laden family traveled on NATO military aircraft carrying Western drugs.
That's fact.
Designated locations.
That's right.
The Muslim world today, both modern and moderate and so-called extremists or fundamentalists, both of them have been co-opted and conscripted into the service of NATO. The last point I will make, what most don't know about the Wahhabis, Wahhabi Islam in America, and why I said, because I said, when they condemn the Nation of Islam, their condemnation in truth is less motivated by theological qualms. At the root of so much of that condemnation is NATO military strategic objective.
Two questions. One, when El Malik Shabazz went overseas to Hajj, and he came amongst the blue-eyed, blonde-haired, and also the pale Arab, was it the Wahhabis that he was referring to when he was enamored?
It was the Wahhabis. He met with the crown prince. So of course, he had there's two parts of his narrative. Of course, I saw the Muslims whose skin the whitest of white, whose eyes the bluest of blue, the hair the blondest of blonde. He was talking about the pilgrims that he was on Hajj with, but that was a feigned Pauline experience. Malcolm had been to Arabia in 1959 as ambassador of the Nation of Islam. And
that's a fact.
He already encountered Muslims whose skin were the whitest of white, whose eyes were the bluest of blue, whose hair was the blindest of blind. He knew the demographics of Arabia long before April 1964. He knew that Arabia was the bastion of African slavery up to that point. He knew that. But he did meet with and is pictured with the white-skinned crown prince of Arabia, the Wahhabi. And in his autobiography, he had all of these glowing things to say about the crown prince, who had more wives than the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. And he had concubines.
How about that?
But he had these glowing things to say of the crown prince of Saudi Arabia. So he was Wahhabi, the crown prince was. But that particular quote arises from Malcolm's experience during the ritual of Hajj, when everyone was in Ihram garb, because the crown prince wasn't in Ihram garb. He was in his royal garbs.
Right.
When Malcolm and he met and were photographed together. But during the Hajj ritual, everybody's in Ihram garb and everybody is participating in the ritual together.
Right.
So no, there is no politics or none of that during the ritual. But Malcolm knew that that was just ritual. Malcolm was very familiar. He had traveled the Middle East in 1959, and he was well aware of the demographics of the Muslim world.
You all do realize, that there's a huge amount of our people that have no idea that Malcolm had previously been to Saudi Arabia in the Nation of Islam.
Well, and to let you know how remarkable it is. See, we get that language. Muslims whose skin was the whitest of white, eyes bluest of blue, yada, yada, yada. We get that language because Malcolm wrote a letter, sent it to M.S. Handler of the New York Times, and M.S. Handler printed excerpts from that letter, April 1964. Ironically, when Malcolm was in Arabia in 1959, preparing the way for the Honorable Elijah or Umrah, Malcolm was in Arabia in 1959 in Riyadh, and he sent a letter back then, a very different letter.
Right.
And this letter was printed in the Amsterdam News, and we got that letter. So the parallels are remarkable. So we're not making this up. The letter that Malcolm sent back from Riyadh, Arabia in 1959 was printed in the New Amsterdam News, and it's available today.
Yes, sir.
The second thing I want to state, and Saudi Arabia just got rejected by our good brother Ibrahim Traore, and the gesture was they were offering to build over 200 mosques in Burkina Faso.
That's right.
And he got turned down. They turned down the prince. Ibrahim turned them down and said, "We need hospitals. We need schools.
That's a
We're
powerful.
good on the mosque right now." Right?
I didn't know that. That's a powerful.
Yeah, this happened.
He did say that. And what the minister, what Dr. Wesley just said, and what we just discussed gives context as to why Ibrahim Traore said no.
Yes.
Right.
And I'm so glad that we were able to go for a historic narrative to qualify why that is this the Islam that's being run in Philly right now?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Germantown Masjid. The Salafis, yes. The Salafi is a
so the jail Islam, the federal penitentiary and the statewide jail Islam, would that be is that Wahhabi?
Yeah. So the Salafis, they were probably identified as Salafis. Salafis is an outgrowth of Wahhabism.
That's right.
Wahhabis are more state related. The Salafis more popular, but they emerged. The Salafism, the Salafis emerged out of the Wahhabi matrix.
That's right.
And so on the street, most of the popular Wahhabism is the Salafi.
The Salafi, yep.
Right. So that's considered our Islam that our people have adopted.
Yes.
I remember during my incarceration, it's probably 97, an imam came from the East and he said something very controversial that caused like a ideological rift at that time. And he told us, he was like, yeah, the Mahdi's gonna come from here. Boy.
Straight like that. Sun rises in the west.
So many thought pieces started popping off, and it almost created like an internal war.
Yeah.
Because the individuals whose mentality was Arabized, if you will, by way of Aryanization, you know, because they follow Hadith, so they got the orange, you know, they the whole situation, right. And they would not be accepting of the concept that a Mahdi can arrive from one of their own over here. They did not no longer see themselves they didn't see out of their own original eyes themselves anymore. All of that had been supplanted.
The Aryanized Islam is in their brain.
That's right.
Totally.
As black as they may be, when you adopt this Islam, you are adopting the Aryanization of it. It's a poison.
Yeah,
it's a poison.
That's exactly what I'm identifying, that I was able to bear witness to, that these melanated men had an internal struggle and they were fighting it tooth and nail.
Come on now.
That this individual came from the East and told them that. They was like, nah.
Isn't that crazy? It shows you how deep the European psychology is. White supremacy is a thought, people.
Right. So would that be identified, the Hadith, right? This separation of what we look at when we say Sunni and Shiite, and when we speak about the geopolitical situation, right? Where I like to say one God, two prayers, right? So we have these factional disputes amongst one said religion, and then you have this faction versus that faction. You know, how does one God decide against two prayers when you have these factionalized, you know, situations in one quote unquote religion? So can we get an overview? We know that the Saudis are banging on the Yemenis, and we know that they was up in Syria because they was banging on Syria being a proxy for Iran, right? Does the fractional separation of Islam, is it based on ethnicity and Aryanization aspects? Or is it all just based on ideological and, you know, zone conflicts? I'm listening.
Dr. Wesley is way more versed in this because of his skill set and his education and experience. But I just want to say this really quick as a precursor to, because I want to hear what he has to say. But a huge amount of the so-called religious difference ain't religious at all. It's social, ethnic, political, masquerading as religious indifference.
I would agree. I would take it a step further. All of these geopolitical conflicts within the Muslim world,
yes,
at root of them, they are NATO operations. They are distinctly NATO operations. That's not to say that Sunnis and Shia don't have legitimate, long-standing beef that absolutely was violent. That absolutely was the case.
Yes.
In the Islamic Middle Ages, there's some real beef there. The martyrdom at Karbala, the murder of Ali's son.
Does that go back to Umayyad dynasty?
That's pre-Umayyad.
That's pre-Umayyad. But was there a rift?
Well, I'm sorry. No, it is. Yeah, Muawiyah's son Yazid. So Karbala, that massacre is early Umayyad, but the civil war against Ali is pre-Umayyad.
Pre-Umayyad.
Right.
The civil war on one side was Ali. On the other side was led by Aisha, the Prophet's favorite wife.
That's fact.
So the initial Sunni Shia conflict is pre-Umayyad, but that incident, the massacre at Karbala, the massacre of Hussein, that was Yazid, the son of the first Umayyad Caliph, Muawiyah. And so it is Umayyad, and the issues are way more complex than for me to say the Umayyads were wrong.
Right.
The Shia were right. Both had right and wrong in that conflict.
Yes.
Right.
Now, so yes, there is a Sunni Shia thing. However, these conflicts, the first understand the map of the Middle East, the boundaries of the Muslim world are imposed boundaries.
That's right.
And they are the acrimony that these boundaries cause in the land, the West exacerbates it, relies on it, creates civil war. The Syrian civil war absolutely was, the West is at the root of the Syrian civil war. The West was at the root of the Libyan civil war. So all of these conflicts are NATO operations. And so in that sense, I agree with Sharif. We're not talking about religious theological conflicts.
No.
We're talking about really Western operations.
That's right.
Right.
That's right.
Understood. So when we look at the Saudis making these pacts with the US, right? And the involvement of the UAE and things of that nature, does the rest of the Islamic world say, well, if Saudi is good with them, then Islam should be as well, right? Does the House of Saud, is it looked upon as a caliphate for Islam, or is they operating independently on their own as a political force versus being, you know what I'm saying, the epicenter of where Islam meets and congregates, and it's the Mecca?
What we're looking at, brother.
Are they?
Go ahead, bro. Go ahead.
And I only say that because, you know, I'm reading Project Esther. I'm reading all of this other propaganda that they have over here against what they consider to be quote unquote anti-Semitism or what have you.
Right.
And then if someone doesn't really understand the political landscape, right? Because they're like Saudi with Hamas, and they was fun. They're like, wait, what? Hold on. Because the whole play with Project Esther is they're like, if you make a tweet and you be like, Free Palestine, they're saying that you are a Hamas supporter, right? And they can designate you in a particular way, fine you millions of dollars. And I guess, you know, at some point they'll have some sort of punitive damages out, you know, I mean, other than just what they're speaking on.
Right.
But then that seems to be a contradiction, because how can it apply to the regular citizen and not apply to the administration? Because now y'all sitting down and doing deals with them same people.
Right.
So it could be very confusing.
What you got, let's widen our lens a little bit, right? We're literally in the middle. First, let me just say this. Prophet Noble Drew Ali said, one day the United States will not be able to do any business unless it's through the Asiatics. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad wrote a whole book called The Fall of America.
Yes, he did.
We can't even call this stuff prophetic anymore. We're watching it happen right on our TV screens. You see what I'm saying? So what you're looking at with Saudi Arabia, what we're literally looking at globally, we're looking at a global restructure of global economic power. It's a restructuring. We're seeing it right before our eyes. And what it is like a game of musical chairs where everybody's trying to position for a seat. That includes Saudi Arabia. Come on, think about it. We know that, well, in a general sense, it was a British op that became acquired by the U.S. Cool. But what are we looking at now? They ended the petrodollar. The petrodollar was what kept the U.S. economy going after Nixon took it off the gold standard all the way.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And they had already gangstered the rest of the world through the Bretton Woods Agreement to use the U.S. dollar as the standard to stabilize their economies. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
What happens recently? Saudi Arabia kills the petrodollar. That is the signal of what? People, de-dollarization. And when the dollar goes down, America goes down. And so what you're seeing now is everything is transactional. Now, how does Israel come into this play? And I'm oversimplifying. Israel's sole purpose was to create perpetual instability on behalf of the Euro West in the Middle East.
Because that's a British colony.
Straight like that. You see what I'm saying? It was the whole purpose. But guess what? If the real powers that be have already decided that the new emerging economies, which is in the global South, right? And America is no longer viable. That means the decision's already been made to disassemble America. That's why Trump's in office. That now, if it's already been decided that America will be disassembled as an empire, then that ends the need for Israel. That's why you're seeing the immediate about face all over the place. That's why you're seeing it.
I agree with all of the commentary. Only thing I want to put on the table is understand that this alliance between Saudi Arabia and the U.S. is not a Trump phenomenon.
Nope. Sure isn't.
There's a reason the 9/11 families are suing to have access to those deleted pages from the 9/11 report dealing with Saudi involvement in the 9/11 operation. Now, everyone here knows that 9/11 was an inside job.
Yes, sir.
The three major parties in this operation was the U.S., Israel, and Saudi Arabia.
Right.
The so-called 20 hijackers, most of them came to the U.S. Most of them were on the terrorist watch list before 9/11, so they should not have been able to get into the country. How did they get into the country? They got into the country with CIA visas. This was a CIA op, and the Saudis and the CIA were partners in the logistics of the operation that took down those towers.
Fact.
So when we say Islam is a NATO operation, Saudi Arabia originated as a British op, but the sun set on the British Empire.
That's a fact.
The U.S. rose to paramount position.
That's the truth.
So all over the Muslim world, they give obeisance to the U.S.
Yes.
Except Iran.
Right.
Which is why Iran is the number one enemy of the U.S. and those in Africa.
Yes.
Who are breaking ranks with that Islamic obedience to the U.S. We're seeing them come up now. They are breaking ranks. And this is why we have to support Captain Ibrahim Traore, and all of those who are, they're being very courageous in standing up against the U.S. because the Muslim world, with the one or two exceptions, has been beholden to America. The Muslim world has been conscripted into the strategic aims of the U.S. and the West. So all of these conflicts that you see in the Muslim world, know that they are the playing out of U.S. and Western strategic interests.
That's a fact, brother. You know, I want to go a little further than that. What Brother Wesley just said about the U.S. Picking up world economic power status from England, from Europe. That again, that's what the whole Bretton Woods Agreement was about. Right after World War II, everybody gets bombed except for the United States, say Pearl Harbor. But we know what that was about too.
Yeah.
But bottom line is, the United States came out of World War II in much better economic condition than it did when it went in. Everybody else got bombed to smithereens. Their economies were in shambles, and the U.S. owned 75% of the world's gold reserve at the time and controlled the trade routes. So it was literally like, okay, you want to stabilize your economy?
Right. And they let that bomb.
It was the jukes move.
There's a new sheriff in town after World War II.
Right, because they dropped that bomb.
Yeah.
It was
everybody.
It was the jukes of all jukes. It's like, you to stabilize your economy, our economy stable, it's backed by the gold. Now you make the US dollar the standard for international trade. And at that time, and at that time, the number one commodity in the world everybody needed was oil. See that?
Right.
So then it's like, okay, well, you need to buy oil. Well, as per the petrodollar, you can't do it unless you're using US dollars.
Right. So we look at Bretton Woods, 1944, 44 countries attend. They create a new they put US as the petrodollar, or the stable currency for the rest of the world. And then 1945 begins the military industrial complex.
Ta-da!
We like to call it the technosphere. And now we're looking at, again, I'll bring it back to 2020 when we heard about all of this occurring because of a global reset. And I was able to say, well, you guys is talking about going to EV. So if you're going to electrical, first with the vehicles and then with everything else, that means that the global reset is a global reset of a petrodollar. So I was able to foresee a lot of things that may potentially take place because they were speaking about getting off of one particular hedge, right? That the dollar's hedged to the petro. So I'm like, well, if you go to electric, then the dollar got to be digital because of how they are aligning, you know what I'm saying? Because we're coming into the electrified age, you know what I'm saying? So I'm like, okay, I somewhat see what's taking place here.
Yes,
then
sir.
they're popping out with the sovereign wealth funds, which mainly are crypto. And then, Trump with his world financial and what have you. So this is this entire reformatting and restructuring of what currency is and how these geopolitical powers have to be reshuffled.
Right.
Because, when you upset the balance, there's trillions of dollars in flux to get thrown up.
You already know. And what the mere fact that we see a Ibrahim Traore, the mere fact we see a union of Sahel states, and ain't none of those guys on the other side of the grass, the mere fact that the BRICS alliance exists, and it states openly in it that it's to provide alternatives to the Euro-West economic. Come on, bro.
Right.
It means that somebody in higher up has made some serious decisions, and you're seeing a shuffling and a reassignment of global economic power.
Henceforth,
and guess who's left out? The Euro-West.
Right. The next question was going to be about China and Russia and the roles that they play. That's that I don't want to go too deep into that.
Yeah.
but do you see them as viable allies to these Muslim countries that are in revolution right now, who basically don't necessarily need to align with the European power or an Asian power? However, in this game of chess, and then this restructuring is taking place, and the doors that are opening up so these brothers can do business and begin to rebuild and do things. How do y'all see it from your standpoint?
I would say that China and Russia are kind of playing the role of the robber on the right of the crucified Jesus that knows he's going to be resurrected. That crucified Jesus that everybody, the robber on the right knows is going to be resurrected is our people. You see what I'm saying? So what is he saying? Yo, I'm gonna rock with you. Just give me a space when y'all get back on top. You know what I mean? So I look at it from my own meager research and understanding is, you know, that's not, China and Russia are not the people that Africa should just totally lean on because they don't need to. If we're looking at a restructuring where China and Russia are owners and controllers of global financialized capital, but the difference is that they're looking out for their nations.
Right.
Okay. Now we have what we call a national, and these like Eric Prince, like, you know, BlackRock, State Street. Right. These guys, they're a national. They don't give a damn about no nation.
Right. No nations.
And that's who Trump works for.
Right.
See what I'm saying? But China, Russia, they are controllers. They play a major part in the restructuring of the global economy, but they're going to look out for their nations.
Right.
Yeah.
When I see China so heavily in Africa, when I watched and listened to our brother Captain Ibrahim Traore in Russia,
right,
sit down for that interview and sit down with President Putin and thank President Putin for what Russia had invested in terms of brick and mortar needs that his country had at the time. Russia supplied it. I thought about what the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad said of the Great War.
Ooh.
China and Russia will war with the U.S.
Come on now.
Now, we always thought that with the Trump presidency, beginning with Trump 1, that the U.S. and Russia are now buddies.
Right.
The historic conflict that was to eventuate in World War III, Trump has come up in that squash now because Trump and Putin are besties. But now we see the fracturing of that relationship.
Right, brother.
Hostility growing between the two. So the conflict, the war between Russia and the West and the U.S.
Yes.
that we thought Trump was the fix to, we see that no, that is still on the divine schedule.
Yes, it is, brother.
And so when I look at Captain Ibrahim Traore, it's a small African nation.
Yes.
But he in that nation he commands such attention from the East and the West. And I'm thinking, is he in his great effort, this great African Muslim, this great African revolutionary,
yes,
is he going to be part of the trigger of this global conflict
Mm.
between China, Russia, and the US? I don't know, but this is what is on the back of my mind as I'm watching this play out, especially with Captain Ibrahim making an appeal to the black men and women of America.
How about that?
Right.
So we do know that World War III, the initial stages of it, will be Russia and China against the U.S.
That's right.
I
So
see it.
when I heard Trump call his bestie crazy,
Right.
and he's raging against his BFF, and Putin, not after the 2 hours on the phone with Trump,
Turns around and bombs.
turns around and bombs
Exactly.
Ukraine.
Right.
Say, damn what he talking about.
Right.
Mm.
Right. Brother Wesley, in addition to that, to what you're saying, when Trump was elected the second time, there were Russian officials connected to Putin that were celebrating, high-fiving. They said, congratulations. But you know why they said congratulations? They said because that's the end of the American empire on an accelerated rate.
So the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan said Trump is taking America to hell on a rocket ship.
Straight like that. That's right. That's right.
Yes.
He is in charge of the disassembling of the American empire. And it's, you know, how we say in the streets, we don't care what your mouth said, we watching your hands. You know, so the actual outcome is the intended outcome. When you look at this crazy tariff war, he's saying, yeah, well, that's going to bring No, what's the actual outcome? The actual outcome is that it's further and in an accelerated rate isolated America from its allies. And for the party that's anti-tax, that is the ultimate tax. Prophet Drew Ali said America's going to tax us to death. We're looking at it.
Yes, real quick. Even with the incident that we saw with the melanated general making the statement, right? Was that ever verified? Right? Because what I noticed is that this individual's name is C.Q. Brown, and he was a Joint Chief, and he got fired in the late February. He was part of the DEI SAC when Pete Higgins took over the department. He was the main reason that the military officials stood up and they said, if there's one person that's not a DEI hire, it was this individual. He's a very decorated, military man, for lack of a better term. So when I saw that provocation take place, I'm like, was that authorized? Is that something that was AI? Was it even real? Or was it just something to pull us in and tempt us to see or gauge where the quote unquote American populace was at in regards to the support? Because it was at the same time that the whole world seemed to be showing global support. So again, I would ask, was anybody able to confirm that? Because again, he was removed from his position and he retired not too long after that. I do know that he comes from Air Force, and they said that he was over AFRICOM, which puts him in a position where he would make that statement. I would also want to point out that Macron met with Trump first, right? And he met with him more than once. So I already knew that if there was a level of provocation, it was definitely going to come from France leaning on the U.S. saying, we can't let this get out of control, per se, right? This is what this quote unquote represents.
Because of course it was France and the U.S. that murdered Gaddafi.
Right.
Yes. They moved him out of the way. So, and exactly, their knowledge of keeping said regions stable for whatever reason, whether they be for political reasons, And again, whether they be to, because I noticed something a lot about the French interference in melanated places of influence in particular. It's always the spiritual import places. It's always the place where our spiritual sciences are kind of
That's a
very
great
strong,
observation. Yeah.
whether that be Burkina Faso and Benin, whether that be Haiti and New Orleans,
Come on
whether that
now.
be French, it's in the French are very hands-on, if you will, right?
That's a great
Whereas the
observation.
German is the scientists who study you,
Mhm.
right? And
Absolutely.
the British will put you in the cage. The French will get in your genes and mix with your genes.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's a great
You
observation.
know,
Yeah.
so and yeah, they become you, right? And they become you, and you become a Francophile.
Right.
And they'll
Right.
leave you, and you still got their language, and you can't get away from them. I think that's the situation in Haiti. They said they
Mm.
kicked white men out, but they kept his religion.
Wow.
Right. And blue. When you look at France, right? When you look at the French, they were the ones who took over Moorish provinces. They're the ones who usurped the Moorish empires, henceforth while they were in Fez, Morocco, they were in Mali, you know what I mean? They went over and basically capped all of these
Yeah,
spiritual
yeah.
centers and
All the
whatnot.
spiritual centers. And then you look at the Jesuit influence with them being the military of Jesus. And
Right.
I know from personal knowledge that they play in spiritual warfare arenas, and it's not necessarily all physical with them.
No doubt.
So, just taking all of this to note, what I mean? I just wanted us to give a general perspective in regards to where do you see these provocations coming from? Do you think that they're real? What are the threats that beset our good brother and the coalition that he belongs to? Because like Red said, it's just not him by himself. And I do want to point out, I also this article that I remember in the New York Times when Eric Prince was in Congo and Dikembe was Congo, and they was all talking about, getting into Africa. And if America missed it, they're gonna miss the race because the rare mineral race powers the quantum race. The quantum race powers the race for space. And the race for space is what they consider to be hands-on. And I'm sure our good brother Wesley can expound on that as well with his vast knowledge of Project Stargate. You know what I'm saying? Because I still want to speak about the fact that mysteriously Project Stargate pops up in December out of nowhere, right? Because there's a report from 1984 about an incident from 1977.
Correct.
Right.
And then a few months later, not a few months, a month or some change later,
Yeah, right
they
after
turn
that.
around and they name an entire CIA project for AI startup the day after he gets sent on January 21st, $500 billion Project Stargate.
No,
Right.
absolutely. Let's when we return because it's 9. I have to drop off.
Yes.
But so that subject, well, we about to go live in a few days.
Right.
Yes. We
So
Right.
we gotta say something for the people, right? So
I gotta say something for the people. I just the observation you just made, I don't have an answer for it. It's a very good observation about this provocation. Was it authentic? So we definitely need to do a deep dive on it. This was a great collab. I think
Yes, sir.
this is the first time that I like that, the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
Usually fantastic for sure. But
I think this is the first time in this new cycle on this channel that we have been together for Voltron like this.
No.
If I go on my archives, it probably was 20 years ago, maybe that we did it before.
And look, we still here.
It was
We
in
still
person
here.
in 2013 in Harlem.
That's right.
That's right.
Hey,
Honest to you, brothers.
So real
Please
quick,
excuse your brother. I do have to get out. 9 o'clock was the deadline my family gave me.
okay.
Y'all gave me some jewels to leave with always.
I'm gonna put the flyer up real quick, ladies and gentlemen. On Saturday at 8 p.m. only on Zoom, If you enjoy this conversation, if you enjoy this bill, we just getting warmed up. We're going to take a deep dive into a topic that we are all passionate about, and that is called the hip-hop conspiracy theorem.
Come on
We're
now.
calling it a theorem because we proved the theory that there's no more hip-hop conspiracy. We proved the theory. It is a theorem now. It is a fact.
That's
right? The trial that we are all paying attention to is just an inkling of what has taken place, but it is a very important stalemate. It is a very important hallmark in the studying of what we've been doing for decades and whatnot, to bring to our people and to prove to them that there has been a nefarious force behind this beloved art form, and we have to completely eradicate it.
We're going to unpack that in great detail.
We're going to unpack that in great detail. I want to play this commercial for the family before you get out of here, my good brother. It's just going to give a little glimpse of what it is that we have to look forward to. All right. So y'all say peace to the good brother Wesley. And we
definitely got to do this Saturday, again, brother, man. Yes, sir.
Zoom. We will continue these conversations. This conversation on Saturday will be on Zoom. We don't have to watch what we say. We're gonna have presentations lined up. It's going to be powerful. Red, blue, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Let's go to the commercial real quick, and we will be back.
No way out! No way out! Take that! Take that! Clive, you've outdone yourself this time. This bad boy knows how to act bad.
Take that. Take that.
It's Frankie, baby. It's Frankie, baby. It's Frankie, baby.
All right, ladies, who wants some green? Frank Black, aka Stacks, bad boy for life. It's Frankie Black, baby. Me and Frank White can't be stopped. It's bad boy, baby.
So there you have it, y'all.
Yo, y'all acting up, bro. Y'all acting bad, bro.
The Frankie special.
Wow.
All right. Inshallah, we gonna keep cooking up. You know what I'm talking about? You know what I'm
y'all acting bad, man.
That was
we have to act bad on that one.
That's all I can say. Is that was crazy.
Thank you, Brother Wesley, for your time. Thank you for your knowledge.
Guys, I look forward
Thank
to
you for your consideration.
It's on.
Appreciate you, God. All right. I'll see you on Saturday. Family, make sure y'all get your tickets.
Get your tickets.
Huh?
Get your tickets.
Get your tickets. There's nothing more to say. Get your tickets, y'all. The website is KTL University. All right. You could go ahead and get your tickets on KTL University. Brother SHARIF, we're not gonna hold you hostage overnight. You know what I'm talking about? We're just gonna keep you for another 4 hours. Now I'm just playing. I wanna land this plane on a topic that I was going to pivot to and segue to, and that is hip hop, right? All three of us are very familiar with the industry. We're very familiar with the game. Yes, we all have gray in our beards. Yes, so we come from a generation where we could qualify before and after, right? So we lived in a world before Bad Boy, and we lived in a world after Bad Boy. There have been many times on the show where I wanted to point out in great detail how the industry or the culture shifted during what is known as the Bad Boy era, and how important and how significant Sean Puffy Combs was, not only in New York hip hop, where people tried to split the coast and whatnot, but the overall culture in and of itself, right? His reach was global. Okay, he's seen as a global ambassador for hip hop by many people around the world. Yes. He was the poster child for this modern day iteration of get money hip hop. Materialism hip hop. It's all about the Benjamins. all of the things that we see people quote unquote dying for, selling their bodies for, selling, just desecrating their values for. This was the poster child and the progenitor to this. I want to know from both of you panelists, how are you taking this trial, and necessarily what is the bigger picture that you're seeing being painted? Blue pill first.
My overview, once again, it coincides with what I've been observing in terms of astrological galactic change. This Pluto and Aquarius energy, saying that certain institutions and things that we have been married to for generations have to be torn down to be rebuilt. So I'm looking at a necessary catharsis that's taking place. Is that the right word? No, I'm looking at a necessary just transformation that has to take place in the art form, a shaking up of things, a shifting of paradigms, if you will.
Yes.
And it's tearing the covers off, so it's exposing everything. And again, in line with this time period being about transparency, you know what I'm saying? Everything in the darkness coming to light. All of these things are indicative of what these astrological time periods are about. So I'm watching it play out. I'm also knowing that as a culture, we have professed to be about things that we're not necessarily about. So I'm appalled that the culture doesn't have the stomach to look at pimpery in its face, because in essence, that's what we're looking at. He may be gorilla pimping and different, the sex work culture, the things that we propagate and promote, and we have loved to become the poster childs of as of lately. We really can't necessarily stomach those things. We've just been playing around with concepts. And, the culture allows us to play around with things, and to flirt with things, and to pick things up and put things down. But we have to be very adamant to people about soul contracts and soul ties, right? And walking entities and possession, and the things that we're very much looking at. And I want to say thank you, Brother Sharif, for bringing on Weitenheimer and totally shifting he gave me new language.
Yes,
you know what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
And he confirmed a lot of things from a very technical perspective that some of us spiritualists, you know what I'm saying, we don't have the tangibles necessarily. We just feel like we know things.
There you go.
You know what I mean? He
Yes,
put
sir.
some things into great perspective. Yeah, we're just in those time periods, and I think that it's clear when they speak about Puff, when he blacks out, his eyes turn black.
Mm-hmm.
This, and just his fetishes and his activities, it sounds like he's under possession. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he has maybe, one soul, your initial soul contract, when you sign in and sign up is one thing, you know what I mean? And we forget that this person came to us after 1991 catching or being responsible for 8 bodies being caught.
You already know.
Nine
And
bodies.
in City College, 9, right? So these are the type of individuals that if you were a program, if you was looking to disrupt, if you was looking to lay traps in the industry, if you was looking to harness energy, if you was looking to do all of the things that you were looking to do that we say that they did or we accused them of, that's your guy.
Bro.
And it's played out as such. And we've all bore witness to it. And some of us have been party to it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Bro,
so
no, go, Blue. Go.
I'm like, I already need a shower. Just talking about it kind of makes me.
But you know why too? See, the audience may not know why. See, y'all go back to Four Corners days. You know what I'm saying?
Way back.
We were closer than many to that incident that took place when notice I said Puff, right? When he was doing party promotion,
right,
and caught those 9 bodies
right in Harlem, right at City College.
There you go. See,
City College was never the same after that. Nope. Keep in mind that Brother Wesley spoke of the Dr. Ben, the academia era, and where were they teaching from?
City College.
Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Ben. This was academia from City College. They were the jewels of Black academia, right? That kind of got snuffed out during that era after that quote unquote stampede took place.
That's right.
You know, the school and the energy the school represented began to deteriorate.
Yes. It's crazy. You know, this is what I like to add to that. First of all, I give honor to what Blue just said, everything he just said, because, you know, Blue's response has 1 foot on land, 1 foot on the water. So he's talking social, but he's also talking spiritual, and there are connections. We can't deny them.
Yes.
We can't deny them. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So what I'd like to add to that is this. First and foremost, our people, you know, we have a saying in the Moorish science, or an instruction in the Moorish science of America, behold a part of Allah within you. Right? Remember your own dignity.
Right.
One of our biggest problems is that we forgot. You see what I'm saying? So we forget, because we forget our dignity and who we're connected to, we forget our significance and importance in this world, even to the enemy. We forget that. So we feel, in a general sense, the effect of being attacked or being oppressed, but we don't see our significance sharp enough to spur us to put our finger directly on the pulse of the issues as to why. And I say that to say this. It ain't hard to draw the connections between Diddy and Epstein. It's not hard.
It's not hard at all.
Okay. So let's look at Epstein. It ain't hard to see the connection between Epstein and Mossad.
Right. Not hard at all.
It's not hard to see that he was a Mossad CIA operative operating a honeypot, an ongoing honeypot operation.
Yep.
Now, let's go back to the Smith-Mundt Act. Smith-MUNDT Act. What it was that? And it was revised, I think, around 2012. What is that? Okay, statecraft. What intelligence organizations are engaged in.
Yes.
Right? Especially United States. Destabilization of other nations and other countries. How do they initially do it? Through media and entertainment. All right. Now, the revision or the modification of the Smith-Mundt Act made it legal to propagandize American citizens.
Right.
It made it legal.
Was this during Obama? Was this the law that passed during Obama's reign?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes. So it made it legal for American-based intelligence agencies to run ops, statecraft on American citizens.
Right.
That's what we're witnessing right now.
Right.
That's what we're witnessing when we look at this whole Diddy thing. Because again, the objective is to do what? Let's go back to what we said about the shifting of global economies. Again, this goes to underscore our importance here. The shifting of global economies in the general sense means this, or is this. The new emerging global economies are from the nations that have been colonized and exploited by the Euro West.
Right, global South.
And the Euro West, since World War II to now, has gone from an industrial economy to a consumer economy. We don't produce nothing.
Nothing. Yeah, you just...
So we're no longer viable.
Right, just customers.
So now it's being disassembled in favor of the exploited. And look at us. We are, I'll use this particular terminology, we are non-resident members of the global South nations. Did you catch that?
Yes.
So if the United States is going to survive the inevitable, it's going to be through us.
Right.
So now you got the robber on the left of Jesus, right?
Right.
We ain't trying to hear him. He's trying to ride the thing till the wheels fall off. See what I'm saying? What's he saying? He's like, man, we're going to ride it till the wheels fall off. So guess what? Right? We're going to make those Negroes look as unattractive as possible to the global South, to their brothers and sisters in the East.
Wow.
We're going to make them look as unattractive as possible.
Right.
That's what we're looking at. It's destabilization of statecraft domestically.
Right. So if they were able to take one person, all right. So this goes back to, again, this brilliant conversation that you had with the good brother Weitenheimer, right?
Sir, yes, sir.
And he was speaking about conformal reality.
Yes.
Right. So if you're able to use one individual as the, the apex of where attention flows to, and that person becomes, let's say, for lack of a better term, the head of the dominant nigga hierarchy, right? Because whoever sits up top of that particular dominant hierarchy is able to control the groupthink of whoever comes up under that conformal reality, and they set the standards.
They set the standard.
Get money, fuck bitches. It's all about the Benjamins. X, Y, and Z. You know what I'm saying? I gotta get mine, you gotta get yours. All of this rugged individualism. This speaks to crass capitalism, right? And morality, discipline, and all that other stuff goes out the window, right? Because now you're in Rome doing as Romans do.
Right.
The global
and that's
South.
what Cassie represents as an archetype. I don't mean to cut you, but Cassie represents as an archetype. She's the model. She's the model of crash capitalism and devaluing yourself and basically doing whatever it takes to get ahead.
Well, yeah. I often cite this in the conversations because I remember growing up and not knowing what this meant, and then when I found out what it meant, I was appalled. The girlies are free because the crack costs money.
Come on now,
right?
Girlies are free because the crack costs money.
We're speaking about the systematic devaluing of one's humanity for materialism, for crash capitalism and materialism for substance, right?
Yes.
And because he's a Scorpio, I look directly at the counter to Scorpio, which is Taurus, which deals with value.
There you go.
Right. So the devaluing of a person's life, humanity, worth, or what have you, to put an inflated value into the same dollar that we're talking about is destabilized in other places, but it's still hitting for what it's hitting for over here, right? Because we don't talk about the devaluation. A dollar is still a dollar. It hits for to a degree. I remember,
real quick, Blue. As the dollar devalues, so does life.
I was about to say that. I remember during COVID, and it was a lockdown, and I get to Miami, you know what I'm saying? And I overhear a proposition that was being made on the beach of a young lady by an Italian tourist, and her numbers kept falling. I was like, hold on, sis. You gonna wear a rain suit when you go and do this with homie? You do know that it's C-19. I was on my Surgeon General then just to prevent her from making a bad decision.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But I saw, so the devaluation of the body was in league in line with the devaluation of the dollar. Things started getting sketchy.
Isn't that something?
So when I look at, I'm like, yo, this dude controlled that trade. He controlled the market on body versus dollars. And I literally watched our people, because he provided and we don't want to lay everything on his shoulders,
right?
But I'd be goddamn if he wasn't the seven galley of it. He provided a cinematic soundtrack to crack music, and crack had never sounded as attractive as when it came out by way of Biggie Smalls.
Blue.
And then Biggie Smalls
Let me
started tagging other people.
Let me remind you all of something. And I'm going to and tie this together. Let me remind you all, just a few years ago, there was a European Jewish woman speaking at a panel in the United States. I believe it was in Atlanta. And she said that the number one concern of Israel is the black man in America.
The black man in America.
But then said, we have something, essentially said, we got assets that are going to deal with that. What do you think?
So in 2020, right, because they just were celebrating the George Floyd situation.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if we don't document this properly, people will completely forget the propaganda campaign that usurped what is known as the uprising.
Yes.
I remember the day. I remember that there was a countdown because they put out a clip. They put out a clip, and then you was like, damn, what is Meg Thee Stallion and Cardi gonna come with? Like, what's that about? They put out a clip.
Right.
And a few days later, they dropped WAP. Yep. Right? Wet Ass Punani. Yep. And this was in the midst of the uprising. This was in the midst
of it.
Huh?
In the midst of it.
It was right in the midst of it.
We're not paying attention.
It was right in the midst of it. Right? And yes, they are going to pardon Chauvin, whatever his name is. They definitely
it's going to happen.
That.
Well,
this was the Israeli consulate that brought that up. Ross Ben came on a show and he broke down in detail how there were there's proof of the 12 tribes being over here, and this was something that they was on. These people, the fake ones, were on top of that from all the way back then, right? They all in Pennsylvania and other places. They were studying us in the Adirondack Mountains, all of these things where they were finding Hebrew writing, all of that stuff.
Of course.
When they dropped that thing about WAP, when they turned 2020 into ratchet season, right? When they remember, people were on lockdown. They had a few dollars. They was on Stacking Bread. Tory Lanez was doing the online shit with the radio. So a lot of people were horny, right? Yeah. They were bottling up a lot of that pent up energy. Right. Then we got hit with the lynching, right? So then after the lynching, people began to exert a lot of pent up energy, and they start burning shit. They start breaking things. They start coming back outside. The mask started coming off, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they dropped the whole movement behind the music. The song was a soundtrack to a movement that the Democrats and other quote unquote liberals were already preparing and prepping when they were going to put the melanated woman out there as what? The new quote unquote poster child of liberation, diversity, freedom, and all of these other quote unquote slogans that they cooked up the same way that they cooked up I Can't Breathe, and you niggas had a problem with breathing a few years later.
Oof.
Right? Yeah. So underneath that, right underneath that, not even 2 inches underneath that surface was prostitution, abortion, city girls, ride the boat, all type of shit. Sleep with your oppressor as a way to get back at him. Like, yo, we got Popo, right. Popo, go twerk on their cars and offer them, like Blue Pill said, a discount on a night of fun.
And all in the name of liberation. How you see how that worked?
And keep in mind, George Floyd, they was rumored to be an adult star, right? So that was the foundation of that energy. They sacrificed an adult star. They stood on top of his cadaver and they began to spirit cook, right? So it was already dealing with something lower because mad people. I looked at the Google Trends. Once they put that report out, niggas wanted to go and see what that was about. Women, black women. A lot of people went to go see. Well, what's that tape about? What's going on with George Floyd now? What? Right? So it already was given this type of sexual current.
Wow.
And then WAP came out.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and then WAP came out, and then everybody was on some, oh, you know what? We're not gonna protest right now. I'm gonna smash something. That's how I'm going to get my that's how I'm gonna offset all of this pent-up frustration.
Anger.
In other words, which I know our brother Dr. Wesley is gonna go in on it, but in other words, hip hop has been literally weaponized against us, but that's too general to say. You know, it is. I'll quote Aleister Crowley. Aleister Crowley said it this way. He said, to otherwise unfit the man of earth in America for his evident purpose, that which is to supply the world with supermen.
Right. That comes out of the Ubermensch.
Yes.
With Friedrich Nietzsche and them.
Nietzsche, that's
and
right.
This whole thing about the last man and the overman, right? This is what you get with this whole technocrat movement, where they basically are trying to stop aging and create what is known, and they're looking at the, look at the building and that's what this whole golden era of Trump is, and it's the golden era of man who was dying of deaths, the white man who was dying of the deaths of despair. He has a low body count. He's not having enough sex. His women don't want him, right? He's the last man. But now in this golden era of quote unquote, and it's spreading across, they got MAGA and they got MEGA. They just let Tommy Richardson out today, or whatever his name is, over in the UK.
Yep.
So they got MEGA, make European great again, and make America great again. So this whole revival, this crusades for that matter.
It's crusades.
Right? It's a crusades and whatnot.
They like that. It is.
Yeah. But it's leaning into them becoming this Ubermensch. And and this whole thing about Stargate, all of this money into AI, that's translation, that's transhumanism, right? That's AGI, that's transhumanism, and that's that Neuralink shit, like what people are talking about. But that's really them attempting to do what is known as the Promethean myth, right? So Prometheus gave man fire and went against God, or went against Zeus for that matter.
Yes.
And he played God, or he tried to play like one of the gods. So this is what Elon and them is doing. They're trying to play Prometheus with the AI shit by saying, yeah, we're going to create something more intelligent than man. We're going to Mars. We're doing all of these great things.
Yes. It's deep that you even bring that up, right? Because it's like full circle. It's like, we measure time, the intelligent, the illuminated measure time in a cycle, right?
Right.
So would you just, the pros and cons about AI, the pros and cons about gene splicing, right? Especially AI though, right?
Right.
Isn't it the exact same conversation that's in Surah 2 of the Quran of Mecca, where Allah says to the angels, look, I'm going to create Caliph in the earth, generation after generation. And then the angels said, but wait a minute, you might make something that might cause mischief in the shedding of blood.
Right. So look.
And then Genesis, first chapter, Elohim says, let us make man in our
image. Right. So then boom. So Saudi Arabia, the same place where people are coming to pray, and they say don't worship no idols. And you have the last pope was raising concerns about AI being the Antichrist.
Yep.
But you have this Muslim Islamic quote unquote, the crown jewel of Islam getting in bed with artificial intelligence. They said that we're moving away from oil. They didn't say we're just going to add this on to our, no, they said we're pivoting away from oil, meaning the petrodollar. We are pivoting away from oil as our primary source of income, and we're going to make it AI.
Woof.
But
woof.
In hindsight, when you look at what was done in Is It Real to the Ghazians and whatnot, that was AI. That's the AI that they're talking about. Yes. Surveillance, automated, autonomous weapons, the two programs, the two LLMs that they had functioning called Gospel and Lavender, right? Where they were able to target people based off of the biometrics. Because remember that whole area is one of the most surveilled areas in the world. They have biometric information on everybody, all kind of stuff. Yep. So the real AI that they're really breaking, they're not breaking all of that bread for Chat GPT. They're not breaking all of that bread because they are, we could write reports on them. No, when they say AI, they're talking about being able to lock shit down.
There you go.
They're talking about those drones. They're talking about facial recognition. They're talking about biometrics and things of that nature. Palantir. Yeah. So they were shown.
They're talking about They're talking about already pre-installed nanotech that they can take advantage from the outside.
Right. The stuff that people already got in their
already in. Yeah.
It's already there. Mm-hmm. So now they got reports saying, in 5 years, nanotech is going to cure cancer. They're just going to inject a whole bunch of tiny robots in people's bodies and whatnot. All of that. Right. That's what these countries are getting behind Trump with this conversation about. It don't got nothing to do with making pictures on your phone.
No. That's a fact. That's a fact.
So we're going to land this plane. We already at 2 hours and 15.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
How much time you got?
I gotta run, dear brother. I gotta run too. You know, But this
we passed Blues that time. We way past Blues. We in uncharted waters with Blue right now.
This is powerful.
Can y'all leave your family with a good word? I mean, there's so much that I wanted to get into, but I'm not greedy and whatnot. This was a great dissertation, and we're gonna let the people digest it.
You know what I want to say, Brother Red?
Yeah.
This, as a closing for me is this: the times we're in right now. Like, okay, I've said this before on your show. In the 30s or in the late 20s, early 30s, with the stock market crash, Great Depression, most people lost their shirt. But there were a few people that got filthy rich, and not because they were mean or evil or whatever. Maybe some of them were, but they got rich because they realized one thing: when there are no rules, you make the rules. And then when you make the rules and everything levels back out, your rules all become the rules.
That's right.
We're in that time now. This is not the time for our people to be passive in any shape, form, or fashion. But it is the time for us to learn to work together. But it is not the time for being passive. Right? I'll give a quick example. A lot of times we just have to demonstrate that we're intelligent. That shifts things. Okay, citizenship is considered sacred. Why? Because you can't put a dollar amount on it. It's your allegiance. It's your life's blood you're pledging. Right? What did 48 do, or 47 do? He put a dollar amount on it. Okay, a $5 million gold citizenship card. That's sacrilegious. But watch this. It'll never happen, but we can demonstrate that we're no longer colonized mentally by saying something like this. Oh, okay, $5 million, 50 people, 50 of us say, hey, how about we get together and we collateralize our citizenship? See, you want to call a bluff? That's calling a bluff right there.
Right.
That's calling a bluff. You get 100 people to do it. What you got? You got one hell of a microeconomy overnight, don't you?
Right.
That part.
That part.
See?
It's time to work, man. It's definitely time to work. If there was no other time,
right?
Now is that time.
Right.
I would leave us with,
Oh no, I gotta hear
everything.
Go,
everything that we're bearing witness to, what I'm saying, speaks to the creed, and I think that we're all up here to uphold the creed. In this particular case, don't be a slave to carnal senses or the plane of manifest. Spoken so eloquently by my good brother Sharif, quoted from Circle 7 Quran.
No, the actual fact, bro.
So yeah, y'all, don't get lost in the source of this all. You know what I'm saying? We always have to be reminded of what we're in this for. What is your why? Every single day, audit yourself, audit your activity to make sure that your thoughts are your own. Yes. You know what I'm saying? Your authentic self is good enough. This is your time and your opportunity to break out of the mundane and do something that's never been done. We are waiting on you out there, family. You know what I'm saying? The dissolution is disappearing. So, you know, as the world is in need of something new and as it awaits something new, why not shoot?
Come on, bro.
That's right.
We're the ones most qualified, especially here in America. Look at
Right.
all we've gone through, and we still believe in the American social contract.
Still.
To this day.
To this day.
And we're the only ones that can actually manifest it and make it look or be worth something at the end of the day. So the real American, please stand up.
Come on.
Well,
and with
that is the message. In other words, watch this. Watch this. We say in the Moorish Science of America, how old is our flag? Is over 10,000 years old. China got 5,000 years of history. 249 years?
Right.
And as a world empire, post-World War II, it's the shortest empire in world history. Right? What's my point? My point is, what we consider the great American experiment, the true American citizen is still in the oven. He ain't done yet.
He ain't even finished baking.
We ain't seen him yet.
Look, when we speak on magical moments, this right here, at the end of the June, right? June 28th, we're going to all be on this crystal right here in Atlanta, Atlantis. We're all going to converge on top of this crystal to see the sunrise. This will be on a Saturn day, 6/28. And this is when we're going to be getting together and making some moves that we don't make on YouTube and whatnot. And we're going to be doing some monumental things as a collective. And we look forward to seeing y'all in the building, 6/28. It is free. All you have to bring is your body and whatnot, and you have to wake up early.
That's
and whatnot. That's your qualification. If you could be disciplined enough to open up your eyes and make it out there, I don't care if we was meeting up at 3 a.m. You feel me? If we make the call, then we should be there. It's a purpose behind everything. So this is where the magic is going to be done. It's going to be monumental. So much to talk about that date. But as it leads up to the date, we will unpack it.
Yes.
What we want to focus on is Saturday with this good brother right here, Dr. Wesley Muhammad. Please show support. The brother, he doesn't do this all the time, but he did it for us because y'all was asking for him on the platform to do a lecture, and we're gonna blow this hip hop thing out of the water. Where it needs, you know, we're gonna give it the tune up that it needs and whatnot. So I want to say
then we got to circle the wagon and reconfigure this build so we could formulate a lost team 2.0. Right.
Mean. That's
part.
right.
I'm gonna go to this commercial and then we out of here, ladies and gentlemen. I want to say thank you. Real quick, Copper Moon, if you have a Cash App, because you went and found Dr. Wesley's white paper, like you went and found his research paper. I need y'all in the audience. It's like 500 plus. Please, if you respect hard working and if you respect, like you came from your 9 to 5 and you respect a hard worker, you respect somebody that's on point, I want you to gift this sister right here and show us some love for the hard work that she does every single time we get on. We had to ask her, was she AI?
Wow.
That's how much she working automated.
That's beautiful.
And please, if y'all have any Cash Apps or any way for the family to show love and whatnot, because the best nation is a donation. You feel me? And we do this for the people. We don't do this for nobody else. Right. Yeah. So make sure y'all take care of the Mod family, show some love and whatnot. And we will see y'all Third Eye Thursday.
Yeah. Absolutely. I definitely would say, please, family, buy a ticket, tap in, because it's going to be monumental. Let's make it all worth our while. That's right. I know we all in the lab. I know everybody's bringing quality.
That's right.
Not fear.
That's right. Quality over fear.
Yes.
Research over gossip and all of that other stuff that they on the internet doing. We're going to give y'all some real deep dive. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, One more commercial with Frankie, and then we out of here.
No way out! No way out! Take that! Take that! Clive, you've outdone yourself this time. This bad boy knows how to act bad.
Take that. Take that.
It's Frankie, baby. It's Frankie, baby. It's Frankie, baby. All right, ladies, who wants some green? Frank Black, aka Stacks, bad boy for life. It's Frankie Black, baby. Me and Frank White can't be stopped. It's bad boy, baby.
Red, blue, purple light, red, blue, purple light, facts. Red, blue, purple light, red, and blue, purple light, facts. You can get to know the ledger, sacrilegious Sunday to melanin Monday. You can get to know the ledger, my love. Just open your third eye on Thursday. Lord, the food, the art, the clothes, the Vatican's getting exposed fast. We put the show on the road. You better stay on your toes. I was till the land focused on the ego. Then I opened my heart, let go of the ego. Grand after grand, we're stacking up these C notes. Facts, facts, yeah. We gon' put this shit on our backs. Facts, facts. We in your city, pull up where we at. Facts, peace, love and light. Peace, love. To the family, peace, love, and light. To the family, peace, love, and light. To the family.
These days and time, black man, is going to be the time that you have been waiting for. You came here for a reason. Whatever pressure, whatever adversity, whatever the fuck you feel, I don't know what you feel, but whatever you may be feeling is going to push you, and it's going to provoke you, and it's either going to make you or break you, similar to how pressure busts pipes or the shit makes diamonds.